All right, we're going to call to order the special meeting for the Cochise County Board of Supervisors. Today is Tuesday, May 13th. We're meeting in the Supervisors Hearing Room in Melody Lane. Pursuant to ARS 38431.02H, the public will have access to the meeting room 15 minutes prior to the start of the meeting. Any item on this agenda is open for discussion and possible action. Members of the Board of Supervisors will attend in person or via Microsoft Teams. The members of the public may also attend via Microsoft Teams or the mobile app. The board will permit public comment during the discussion of any item on this agenda. Any individual wishing to address the board regarding an agenda item must complete and submit a speaker request form to the clerk of the board. Forms must be submitted no later than 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting for remote participation or prior to the commencement of the meeting for in-person attendance. We'll begin with a roll call. District 1.
Good afternoon, Chairman Crosby's here.
District 2.
Gomez is here.
District 3, Antonori is here. Let us show all three supervisors are present and in person. Before we ask for a motion to move to the first agenda item, I'd like to just lay out a few sort of rules of the road here as we go. The order of the speakers is going to be in the order they were received by the clerk of the board, so it will be as you guys applied for your request to speak. We will go in that order, so it is first come, first served, basically. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. If one of my colleagues, fellow supervisors, has a question, you will be granted additional time at the purview of the chair, which is me. So if Ms. Gomez or Mr. Crosby has an additional question to clarify maybe a statement you made, you'll be given additional time to answer a member of the supervisor's questions. We are going to take one recess halfway through this, so approximately around 6:30. We will take a 5-minute recess to allow everybody a chance to hit the men's or ladies' room, and then we will come back in and reconvene and take the meeting to about 7:30. At which, at the end of the public comment period, each supervisor will have an opportunity to give a closing statement. I want to remind everybody the purpose of the meeting tonight is to receive public comment regarding a proposed resolution that the board plans to present to both the state and federal governments regarding the Mexican gray wolf and its impact on local residents, ranchers, and businesses within Cochise County. So with that, can I get a motion to move agenda item number 1?
I move that we move the agenda item number 1.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. We will now begin with public comment. So the first person on the agenda to speak is Sonia Gasho, number 1. She was the Speedy Gonzalez of the request to speak. So go ahead, Ms. Gasho, you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Sonia Gasho, and I ranch in the Dragoon Mountains. As you know, western New Mexico and eastern Arizona have been dealing with the reintroduction of Mexican wolves since 1998. The initial reintroduction goal was a population of 100 wolves. The 2024 count was 286 wolves, an increase of 11% from the previous year. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has adjusted the recovery goal to 320 as the average over 8 years, an increasing population over the previous 3 years, and if genetic diversity is high enough. This moving goalpost makes it impossible for ranchers to effectively implement resource management and avoid wolf conflicts. Wolves require forested terrain with abundant sources of prey like elk and deer. Cochise County certainly doesn't fit the needed habitat or contain a large population of elk. Current recovery goals include a healthy population of 200 wolves in Mexico. In Sonora, wolves are routinely shot and poisoned. Therefore, any recovery must be decoupled from a wolf population in Mexico. Under Section 10J, an individual may defend themselves and others from direct wolf attack. However, on federal lands, individuals may not defend their livestock, pets, or horses, even as they watch wolves attack them. Ranchers are compensated on confirmed wolf kills only. According to a study by John Oakley, fish and wildlife biologist, for every 1 wolf kill found, there are anywhere from 2 to 7 kills that are not. Therefore, the loss ranchers face is significantly higher than what is reported. No compensation is provided for indirect costs such as hiring range riders, Dobson's Timberline Ranch in Apache County estimates a loss of $325,000 in 1 year, not including direct livestock depredation. We are asking our rural communities to bear the cost of the larger American public's infatuation with the wolf while suffering the loss of livelihood, loss of generational ranches, and emotional anguish. I want to thank Congressman Ciscomani and Congressman Gosar for co-sponsoring H.R. 2227, the Wolf Act, increasing program payments from 75 to 100% of a cow's value. I also want to give a hearty thank you to Sheriff Daniels and the Ranch Patrol deputies for their support of our communities. I am asking you to support delisting and defunding the Mexican wolf program and moving species management back to the state. We ask that you support the Wolf Act, increasing compensation levels, including indirect costs. Thank you on behalf of our rural communities.
Right on the dot. All right, next up is Mr. William Scott Huber. Mr. Huber.
Ready. I'm Scott Huber, Portal, Arizona resident. I worked summers in Yellowstone doing hundreds of hours of wolf research and publishing a novel about gray wolves. The same process that occurred after wolf reintroduction in Yellowstone is now playing out here in southeastern Arizona. Thank you first to our ranchers for providing the food we eat and for their stewardship of the public's wildlife on their lands. While the health of ranching is an understandable concern of the board, we also hope that supervisors understand that there are other groups and economic factors to consider when discussing the future of Mexican gray wolves. For example, in the economic sphere of Yellowstone, where wolves were reintroduced in 1995, it's reported that more than 150,000 people visit annually specifically because of wolves, bringing $35 million in annual tourist revenue to the region. According to Arizona Game and Fish, watchable wildlife activities generate a $1.4 billion economic impact to the state. Cochise County is a top destination for wildlife watchers. Birds are the main draw here, but based on the revenue generated by wolf watching up north, it's reasonable to assume that wolves would only increase economic ecotourism visits. Hotels, short-term rentals, restaurants, and retail all financially benefit from Cochise County wildlife watchers. Conversely, when hunters killed entire packs of wolves near the Yellowstone Park boundary in 2022, tourists boycotted businesses that did not condemn the killings. There was an economic backlash. Mexican gray wolves were reintroduced to the region to restore balance to the environment. When a key predator is removed from its habitat, the ecosystem suffers consequences, like the proliferation of ungulates. Residents of Portal will attest to the overabundance of white-tailed deer in our area. The surplus of browsers in an area can defoliate sensitive desert regions, leading to inadequate natural forage for other species, including cattle. Many Cochise County residents and visitors want to see the wolf population grow to the level needed for delisting and a stable, self-sustaining population. We're asking the Board of Supervisors to stay the course until the benchmark for delisting is achieved. In the meantime, although difficult for ranchers to endure the losses, many programs are available to compensate them for all aspects of predation. The correct option for dealing with Mexican gray wolves is to allow the science that created the recovery plan to result in a stable, healthy wolf population that will eventually get them off the endangered species list. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Kate Scott. Ms. Scott?
Need to get my glasses arranged. Good evening. My name is Kate Scott. Pleasure to be here with the chairman and the supervisors, and I'm the co-founder of the Madrian Archipelago Wildlife Center located in District 1. Let me start by saying that the threat narrative vis-a-vis the reintroduction of the Mexican gray wolf in southeastern Arizona is wildly exaggerated. It looks as to be a good representation of all parties here tonight, engaging in constructive discussion. With all the challenges the Mexican gray wolf faces to survive, extreme drought, habitat loss, illegal killings, border wall, it is nothing short of a miracle that this intrepid pair has found a place to live at all. After 75 years, wolves are back in the Chiricahua Mountains. They are home, where they belong, an integral part of our wild landscape here in the Coronado National Forest, a land of many uses. The law functions in a way that protects livestock producers and assures wolves can prosper for the many benefits they provide to the health of our environment, as well as for hikers, campers, and artists who covet their sanctity and enjoy watching them peacefully. Under the law, Arizona agricultural producers are compensated for confirmed depredations, either through the state or the federal government. In the present situation, the ranchers were or will be duly compensated for 2 cows confirmed predated on recently. Per this press release I can share with you in February 20th of 2025, which states, at this time, the available evidence indicates that of the livestock found dead in this area, 2 were killed by Mexican wolves. Inspections of the remaining dead animals concluded that the animals were not the result of Mexican wolf depredations. So, a fair system is in place here to placate the ranchers' investment losses and assure a diverse ecosystem the wolf plays an integral part of. Wildlife is held in public trust for all. We cannot play God with the lives of these animals. They have a sacred right to be a part of their ancestral habitat. And thank you for the privilege of speaking tonight.
Yep, thank you, ma'am. All right, next up is Mr. James A. Schmidt. Mr. Schmidt.
Good afternoon, honored Cochise County Supervisors, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for hearing me today. Thank you for taking on some challenging issues, including the Mexican gray wolf. Again, my name is James Schmidt. I'm a 22-year resident of Cochise County. I've been in Arizona for 35 years. I'm the retired Wildlife Services USDA Federal Predator Control Agent for Cochise County. I've got 64 years with predators. I've been fully trained on the wolf and the jaguar for the state of Arizona and New Mexico and around. Mexican gray wolves are seen in Arizona, New Mexico, and Mexico. This dangerous predator has grown from the original 100 planned to almost 300 now. They're looking for more room to expand. And in captivity, there are even more. There's 380 for the last count that they're going to want to release into the Southwest. You may be told here that the take, you may not be told here that the take of endangered species is prohibited by the Endangered Species Act on both public and private land. It's very complicated, and I know about the 10J rule for sure, but it's very tricky. Again, I was fully trained on all this stuff. Wolves kill for a living. Wolves kill for fun. I was fully trained on how to examine and evaluate whether a wolf kill was the case in livestock. Fully trained on it. I know how to do it. Animal activists will tell you that this predator once roamed most of Cochise County, but that was 70 years ago, before we had 125,000 people here. Cochise County is the largest population county that the wolf has been brought back to. There are far more people here than Apache County and Graham County and anywhere else. There's far much more risk to it. You will hear claims that the wolves have been in the Chiricahua Mountains since 2022. I have absolute proof that they've been moving back and forth between the Gray Ranch in New Mexico and the Chiricahuas, and they don't stay in one place. They travel 30 miles a day, and they range 600 miles. They don't set up there where people can watch them with a pair of binoculars. It's not what they do. They move around all the time. So they can be in the Chiricahuas one day and over in Huachucas in the same day without any hesitation at all. Activists will tell you that they push very hard to prosecute people that harm Mexican gray wolves. I'm going to run out of time. There's a lot to talk about. What I do want to tell you is that these activists 2 years ago attempted to run a a petition through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Department of Interior to put the coyote on the endangered species list because it had too much of a close appearance to the Mexican gray wolf in the wolf recovery area. That means if they got that successfully through, there would be no coyotes killed in this county. And I got a lot more to say, but I gave you a handout.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Appreciate it. Next up is Mr. Dirk Sigler.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I come from the eastern slope of the Chiricahuas, and I've been around here in Cochise County for the last 20 years. I'm a registered voter in District 2, and I want to say good day to you, Supervisor Gomez. Thank you for your recent visit to Portal and Rodeo. When you look around this room, you would think that there are just two groups here, one being pro-wolf and the other anti-wolf. But I'm here to tell you that this is not the case. Ranchers are not unified in their opposition to the wolf recovery program. Instead, I think we're hearing from a highly vocal anti-wolf segment of the ranching community. It's not that they don't have a point of view, they certainly do. And likewise, there's also a difference of opinion amongst conservationists, particularly when it comes to the morality of the wolf reintroductions. We've all seen human-wolf violence playing out. Because there isn't consensus on this issue, it seems to me that this board should be gathering a wider range of expertise before it decides to vote on a resolution. It doesn't really help to polarize the issue. Let's recognize that there are multiple stakeholders when it comes to wolf recovery. And if we have to figure out how to accommodate each other, I'm hoping this board begins to put more energy and its authority toward a more constructive approach. The tourism industry in Cochise County has been valued at $390 million. That's coming from the Arizona Office of Tourism. Where I come from, wildlife viewing is the bedrock of our economy. We rely on healthy populations of wildlife, and for that we need intact and healthy habitats, particularly on public land. Anything we can do to enhance that is good for business. Ecotourism is the engine that drives my community, so I would urge you to at least attempt to understand what conservation biology has to offer on the wolf, not only for its scientific value, but for its economic and its political value. There's a large percentage of your constituency that chooses to live here because of the wild character of the landscape. All of us, ranchers, non-ranchers, feel this way. We can't live here without being moved by the wild heart of this land. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Zachary Palma.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me and everyone here to facilitate this very complicated issue. My name is Zachary Palma. I'm a registered voter in District 2, just live a couple miles away from here. I'm an agroecologist. I work with handfuls, dozens of ranchers in Sonora, Mexico, within our Sky Islands region in the similar landscape. And I urge the board to really think of this issue because there's a lot of opinions, right? There's a lot of folks representing our county here in a holistic manner. If we're thinking about what is the best for this landscape, for the communities that are within this landscape, myself as an ecologist, I see the two largest challenges that we face and that we'll continue to be facing are groundwater overextraction and watershed health, essentially, through issues with overgrazing as well as other issues as we're experiencing currently, drought. And so with this issue, or I guess perspective, if we want to use that word issue on the gray Mexican wolf, I would urge us to listen to the science and listen to the strategies that have been put forward, especially thinking that our challenge here is cattle on the landscape within public land system, that what is a native animal to this landscape? What is our holistic stewardship of this landscape? And the successes that we see within these ranching communities in Mexico working with predators is that a more complete, intact ecosystem also equals a more productive, resilient ranch. Because what are we harvesting from these landscapes for our cattle, right? Forage. We need soil health. And as we know, wolves are indicator species of that very ecosystem health. And so again, I urge our Board of Supervisors to consider the science and listen to these voices. We have a lot of voices here to represent the people of our county. I'm not here to talk bad about ranching. I eat meat. I have my own animals. But when we think of who is on this landscape and how to properly steward this landscape, what is a native species and how did these species integrate in our web of life, right? Cattle have been here introduced in the 1600s. The wolf is a native species to this landscape. I think there's a solution where we can find all community members to be prosperous and satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Ethan Bonin. Hey.
Hopefully I don't lose some friends after I say this. My name's Ethan, and I've been a Cochise County resident for 8 years. I have a background in wildlife biology, and I currently spend my working hours conducting cattle impact surveys on public lands and doing watershed restoration projects. Every year I walk hundreds of miles throughout the state, and what I see is pretty appalling from an ecological perspective. Entire watersheds stripped of vegetation, leaving dust and cow pies to wash downstream during the next monsoon. For generations, ranching interests have been utilizing these spaces with few to no predators, besides coyotes and mountain lions, and this situation is far from natural or balanced to our local ecology. Due to the lack of predators, they have gotten used to poor practice and, dare I say it, substandard husbandry etiquette. Now the wolf is targeted because it forces ranchers to adapt and change their practice to something that resembles more appropriate animal husbandry. A lot of these operations allow their cattle to drop calves year-round with zero protection, and they blame the predators for doing what they do best. If I go and leave my dog in the truck with a piece of beef jerky for an hour and I come back and the jerky's gone, whose fault is it really? That being said, every year roughly $300 million is used of taxpayer dollars to subsidize the cattle production on public lands, and most of that money, I think, is spent irresponsibly. A lot of this is for less than 2% of the total U.S. beef production, and it severely damages our watersheds on a region-wide scale. So while public subsidies and degradation, the public subsidizes the degradation of their commons, we also pay for the lethal removal of our wildlife when it inconveniences the industry. As someone who spends most of the year studying rangeland degradation and health and cattle overuse of land, I can confidently say that a majority of ranchers using public land allotments are doing the public a disservice and are actively degrading the health of our watersheds. Now I'll speak on the hunting interest in relation to the wolf. You'll hear time and time again that wolves are the cause for prey decline throughout our country, and this is just not true. The Cattlemen's Association has spent millions of dollars and worked tirelessly to produce propaganda convincing hunters and the public that declining elk and deer population are a result of gray wolf repatriation. Meanwhile, the industry strips the forest and range of all the best forage while cow pies are left in the barren waterways. And if you don't believe me, I have plenty of pictures and videos to back up what I'm saying. So as a hunter and somebody who wants to see healthy systems, I'm here to support wolves and assure you they are not the problem, and they're only keeping our herds and landscapes healthy. With all that said, I want to remind you all that public lands are not just fodder for cattle operations, and that the vast majority of the public want wolves in these spaces. I'm not here to defend my own economy. I'm here to defend those who can't speak our language, and to do what I can so that the future generations can experience a healthy world. These interest groups who have solely economic... Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, I had a question, and that is...
Hang on, come on back up.
Yeah, you said you used the term public lands. What does public lands mean?
Bureau of Land Management and Forest Service lands. I mean, I don't have an opinion on private lands because that's what people own and they can do what they want. But when it comes to the utilization of a public common, I think that we need to consider how we treat public resources like wildlife.
What is the definition of public lands?
Any lands that are owned by the federal or state governments.
Okay, federal land.
So Forest Service, U.S. Bureau of Land Management,
Okay.
State Land Trust.
Okay, federal land is the definition of public
Right.
land.
So Coronado National Forest,
Okay, thank you
Las Ciénegas, the San Pedro River National Conservation Area.
Thanks for clarifying that. Appreciate that.
I have a question.
Oh, same
So,
gentleman?
Yes. So do you have an idea on how much is public land or how much is federal land or private land?
In terms of what's being utilized?
Yeah.
I think 33% of Arizona is covered in public lands, and a majority of that is utilized for cattle.
Let's bring it down to just Cochise County.
Cochise
because you're in
County,
Cochise.
I'm not sure on the exact number, but I mean, we have a lot of public land here.
So we have a huge amount. So I
Yeah.
guess that
Yeah.
when we're looking, right, we're looking at Cochise County, we're looking what once was and what is now, so how much land has been taken out of the ability to ranch and become federal and state land, which is a lot. And I think that that's something when we're looking at the argument and we talk about, well, the wolf was here 1,600 years, before the ranchers, before this, we have to look at what is now today and the reality of what everyone is maneuvering around. And so when you guys come up, I would really like that kind of information on how you've seen your private land or the public land or the, federal lands, how they've expanded or reduced, because that's the key, right? How are we going to deal in the real world today and tomorrow? Because it's great to talk about the past. The past is historical. You can learn from it, but what is the reality of today and tomorrow?
Yeah, and I'm talking about what I'm seeing today, and I respect ranchers and I want people to keep producing food. I just want to see things done more responsibly, and the future of our watersheds and our communities rely on it. I mean, this degradation affects us all. It affects our rain patterns. It affects temperatures, erosion.
So I was just wanting you to think about how much land exists
Sure.
for everybody.
A quick Google search will do you well.
Thanks, Mr. Bonin. All right, next up is Cheryl Knott on Microsoft Teams. Ms. Knott is online. Are you there, Ms. Knott?
She is online. She just needs to unmute herself.
Ms. Knott. Hello, Ms. Knott. She's not there. Okay, we're gonna skip her. We can come back to her later if she's able to fix her mute button. Next, we're gonna go to Michael Gregory. Mr. Gregory, you'll pass, okay? All right, Cindy Tuell. I'm sorry, how was it?
Tool.
Tool.
You were pretty close.
Oh,
And this is great timing because I can answer the questions you just had. My name is Cindy Toole. I am the Arizona and New Mexico Director for Western Watersheds Project, one of the activist groups that was mentioned earlier. And my organization is the one that submitted the petition to protect coyotes under the Endangered Species Act, because people in Arizona and New Mexico cannot tell the difference between a Mexican gray wolf with a giant, colorful, large collar on it and a coyote. So we need to protect the coyote in order to protect the wolf. To answer your questions about federally managed public lands, they are owned by the people of the United States of America. They are federally managed by the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management. There are about 38.6% federally managed lands in Arizona, about 22% in Cochise County. All of these lands, almost all of them, are stolen lands. They were taken from the original inhabitants. So that's what public lands are. And now I'll get to my planned talk. I'm here today to be a voice for the 2 Mexican gray wolves in Cochise County. These wolves are known as the Manada del Oro Pack. This pack was formed when 2 wolves named Remus and Yave were moved from the San Carlos Apache land into Mexico. The wolves followed their hearts, their instincts, and they traveled to the boot heel of New Mexico in 2022. Unfortunately, the male of this pack was shot in the spring of 2023. We suspect maybe someone thought it was a coyote. Unfortunately, he was shot which left his mate to den alone, who she had pups, and those pups later died. Yave, the mother, continued to travel throughout the Chiricahuas. She went as far north as Mount Graham, and in 2023, she was picked up by the Fish and Wildlife Service. She then spent part of 2023 and 2024 in captivity, where she bonded with a new mate named Wonder. Both wolves were then released back into the area Yave had previously called home. Yave and Wonder have been exploring southeast Arizona since 2024, looking for a place where prey species and wild country are plentiful. They have found that place in the Chiricahua Mountains and the Coronado National Forest. We have made a choice as a society to allow livestock grazing to reduce the number of deer and pronghorn on the ground. That choice has created a conflict for Lobos, who are just doing what Mother Nature tells them to do, survive and raise a family. The Cochise County supervisors and subpublic lands ranchers, based on the meeting I saw last week, seem to be asking for a variety of management changes, from defunding and to delisting the Mexican gray wolf recovery program, to insisting that the constitutional provision known as the Supremacy Clause does not apply in Cochise County. That is not true. These actions are not geared towards coexisting with wildlife. Instead, they're geared towards the self-serving goals of private businesses who want to be able to kill wolves in order to make a profit. I encourage the supervisors to do more to help the ranchers coexist with these wolves and learn about the funding that's available to them, and to ask the state and federal government to fully fund the compensation programs. I have buttons and posters and financial information about the permittees for the allotments where these wolves are located, if anybody would like it.
Thank you, Ms. Toole. All right, next up is Ginger Lynn Cheney. She's on Teams. I'm sorry. She's online. So, Ms. Cheney, you're online. Are you there?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Ginger Cheney, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to address you today. I live in extreme northern Greeley County on the Blue. I know that I live quite a distance from you. However, some of the original wolves were released on our allotments. After dealing with these horrific apex predators for 27 years, I strongly encourage you to support your people in your county by taking a strong stance against the Mexican wolves. It is time to delist and defund. We have been having problems for many years, but the last few years have been catastrophic. On any normal day, we usually have at least 10 packs on our allotments. We have elk and deer where we live. We are currently seeing severe effects on our elk herds because of the wolves. Wherever there is a den, there are no elk calves. No elk calves mean no future for these wild ungulates. I know that in Cochise County, you do not have the same prey base that we have here. Even with the prey base we have, we are still experiencing catastrophic losses on our ranch. Last year alone, we lost about 60 head of cattle. I'm not saying that all of these were wolf losses. We did have a bull struck by lightning, and there were some other instances that happened, but we still had severe losses from the wolves. Most of the calves were never found. When a wolf eats 10 pounds of meat a day, it doesn't take long for a calf to disappear. The mentality is no body, no crime, and these calves are never found. That is not right. There is no compensation for animals that are not confirmed. There is also no compensation for all of the indirect losses. I am currently doctoring 3 calves that are confirmed wolf attacks. They've been taken to the vet, and we're giving them the best medication possible. I hope that I can save them. However, the infection that comes along with wolf attacks is horrendous. There is also more to consider than just the ranchers. Right now, rabies is working its way across Arizona. It is a valid concern for the public to be worried about their safety by having wolves on the landscape. Wolves have attacked people without being rabid, but we also know that rabid animals don't have any fear of humans. There is just a lot going on with the whole wolf program and all of the stipulations, the continual movement of the goalposts, the 100 up to over 300. It's just not correct that all of these things are going on, and I strongly encourage you to stand up for your people in Cochise County and take a strong stance against these animals. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up is Mike D. Ware. Mr. Ware.
Again, my name's Mike D. Ware. I was born in Wilcox. We have the Ware Ranch, myself and my two boys. We got 18 square miles of private property. No adverse grazing, no leases, just private property. I'm a fifth generation. I also hold a Bachelor's of Science in Wildlife Biology from New Mexico State University, 1981. In May 9th of 2020, I had found my first cow that was killed by wolves. This cow went down on her haunches, and 30 feet behind her was her uterus with the calf still inside of it, all consumed up. I didn't know at the time what was taking place. Well, boy, did I learn this last year, what was going on for the last 4 or 5 years up there when we had no notification or notice of these animals in our area. And again, this is private property, completely private property. So I wound up with another cow 3 or 4 days ago that I found. She's totally eat up. She's still greasy. In other words, the tallow is still there. But we can't confirm the cow because she's too old. So the scat is there. The scat was there, same as the confirmed cow, the same big scat that I requested DNA studies be done on it. I never got the DNA results myself, but I was told it was coyote. This was an uncollared wolf that was killed and confirmed on my cow that I called Daisy. Yeah, a pet cow. Most of my cows I know, even though there's 200-300 of them. We know all our cattle, and it hurts to lose one. It's very compassionate, we are. So I requested the DNA, told it was coyote. I was also told at the same time that the canine spread, the bite spread, was in an overlap area of 38 to 40 millimeters, which is consistent with a coyote-wolf overlap. Mine was 37.2. So that brings me to my conclusion that if we got coyote scat DNA, which I never saw the results of, just going off what the Mexican wolf coordinator told me, and we have a bite spread in an overlap, that tells me that we have a severe problem of hybridization. They talk about genetic variability within the species, and they needed more numbers for this genetic variability. They can't get that genetic variability because now they're crossbreeding with coyotes. My uncollared one is proof in point to that position. To make that point better, I collected my own coyote out there. I measured its canines. The spread was 26 millimeters, a far cry from 37.2, which is in a low range of a overlap between coyotes and wolves. I pray that the NGOs with their 301c3 contributions are somehow regulated. Boy, I had a lot to say, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. Appreciate your comments. All right, next up is Erin Hunt, who should be on Microsoft Teams. Ms. Hunt, are you there? You there, Ms. Hunt?
You will need to unmute herself.
Hello, can you hear me?
There you are. Yes, Ms. Hunt, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, supervisors, staff, and members of the public. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Erin Hunt with Lobos of the Southwest, a collaborative effort of concerned community members, scientists, educators, and conservation organizations working to save the endangered Mexican gray wolf. We represent 6,380 supporters and over 1 million digital community members who care about Mexican wolf conservation. I've worked with Mexican wolves for over 17 years, and I'm a visitor to Arizona who appreciates the native wildlife and wild places and vibrant and diverse culture. I frequently spend my time and tourist dollars in the state. I'd like to state for the record that I oppose defunding or delisting Mexican gray wolves, and I support continued collaboration of tribes, counties, states, and the federal government to recover the Mexican wolf. Wolves are an endangered species native to Arizona, and they deserve continued protection from illegal and government-sanctioned killings. Arizona's biodiversity and native species are priceless. Let's keep investing in that natural heritage. I'm speaking on behalf of Arizonans and New Mexicans who couldn't attend today but who support Mexican wolves, including people living in wolf country. Based on research polling data that included an oversample of rural counties to ensure those living in wolf country were represented, we have several important takeaways. Opinion on protections for plants and animals under the Endangered Species Act follows the nationwide trend showing a majority of support. Support for Mexican wolf recovery remains very strong, 73% in Arizona and 74% in New Mexico. 3 in 4 voters in the states want to see the success of Mexican wolf recovery, more than a 3-to-1 margin. The majority of voters in the counties in or near the areas where Mexican wolf recovery is active also support the effort, 56% in Arizona counties and 59% in New Mexico counties. 69% of Arizonans feel we need to do more to protect endangered species, and 57% of voters in rural counties agree. A minority of voters believe livestock should be given higher priority over the recovery of wolves on public lands in Arizona. A majority of voters believe wolves are an essential part of the balance of nature, keeping elk and deer herds healthy by ensuring that the most fit animals survive. They do not believe the wolf population should be controlled because of impacts on deer and elk. The Mexican wolf recovery program should be fully funded and fully staffed so that the state of Arizona continues to receive resources and support needed to recover Mexican gray wolves. Recovery will be the most successful when done through collaboration between counties, states, tribes, and the federal government. Livestock depredations are decreasing despite a growing wolf population, and funding is available for proactive conflict avoidance to prevent livestock loss, compensation for loss, and indirect costs of ranching with wolves. The primary prey base for Mexican wolves is elk and deer, not livestock. There has never been a documented attack by a Mexican wolf on a human. Cochise County is not powerless. You can help people coexist with wolves. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt. Next up is Mr. Jacob Karchner.
Mr. Chairman, board members, thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. I would just like to speak to something. If 73 and 74% of the people in Arizona and New Mexico want to see gray wolves out here, I think it's high time that they started trying to pay for them. I understand your role in these federal issues is somewhat limited, but as we saw with border issues, there comes a point in time where we have to step up and take care of what's affecting our communities. I attended your work session last week, and I want to speak to a few points that were made. One thing that was said was to look at the facts and to leave the emotions out of the decision-making process. So let's look at some numbers. A study conducted by UC Davis shows that a single wolf in the wild can cause up to $162,000 worth of losses to an agriculture producer per year. With the known number of wolves on the landscape hovering around 300 today, not counting the 300 and some that are in captivity, the stated natural increase by U.S. Fish and Wildlife of 14% per year. That means that before this decade is over, we'll exceed 500 wolves in the wild, effectively wiping out the economic footprint of all cow-calf producers in Cochise County. The wheels of the federal government move slowly, so that's the second point that I want to make. It's not necessarily news, but it's something to think about. We as a local community, if we don't start now and join these other counties that have been fighting this issue for over 30 years, we'll be behind the 8 ball and miss our opportunity to have a say in the solution. To my first point, that 73 to 74%, the costs of this reintroduction have been generally borne by the ranchers in Arizona and New Mexico. And the current investigation requirements are ridiculous at best, and they need to be addressed from response times to evidentiary requirements. The movement of the goalpost has been already talked about, so I'll skip over that. Right now, there is no management of the wolves in the wild. They will not relocate a wolf because, or they won't pull it out of the wild and put it back into captivity because all the captive pens are full. I'll just leave you with this. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife, when they started this, experimental, non-essential population is how they define the Mexican gray wolf. That's their words. I believe it's time to admit that this experiment failed, and we need to find a way to manage these wolves that are already in our backyard. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Mr. Gary A. Thrasher.
Thank you all for listening to us. I am Gary Thrasher. I'm a veterinarian. Been at this business as a ranch veterinarian primarily for 54 years in the county here and in other places as well, managed ranches as well. I had a lot to say, but I got to cut it down because I'm a slow talker. In Cochise County, ranches and farms currently actually own that's deeded, about 1 million acres of the county's 3.9 million acres. Somebody here just said that 24% was federal lands. That's another 1 million acres. So there's 2 million acres in there. The rest of it is state lands, state lease lands, which is completely different management than either BLM or U.S. Forest Service. Those U.S. Forest Service lands that are used for grazing are allotments. They are part of their ranch. They are an asset to the ranch. They're a critical part for the operation of the ranch. There are about 300 total actual cattle ranches in Cochise County, cattle producing. Only 300. They produce about $35 million in sales each year, but $116,000 per year is the average gross income for those ranches. 75% of those people net less than $50,000 a year off their efforts. 65% of them less than $25,000 a year. Yet they stay on the ranches. That's an amazing thing to me when you think about it, because the average age of a rancher in this county is 60 years old. How long are you going to stay with all those pressures? A predator can easily break them, and then their land goes into alternate uses. What's an alternate use? It's subdivision. It's trashed. A lot of it is completely wasted. Some of it, which has actually occupied 5 or 6 really large family ranches recently, were acquired by investors, out-of-state investors, mostly what they call land hoarders. They don't give a squat about Cochise County. They just absolutely don't. My notes, I had to spend them on. One of the biggest things that really worries me is the compensation people get for what they call kills. Killing is not even part of what happens in a ranch when there's a predator in the area. That's only a tiny bit of it. Yet they never get compensated for that. There you go. Stress hormones destroy cattle's production totally. And it will be putting them out of business, and you'll be selling your place to somebody else.
Thank you, Dr. Thrasher. All right, next up is Tricia Girardet.
Good evening, supervisors. Instead of being a voice just disembodied, here I am in person. Tricia Girardet, I live in Sierra Vista. I'm most focused, I found, on process. And so the process that I'm aware of so far is that you had a work session on Friday, and I listened to most of it. And out of that, you heard one side very passionately, and there's been no opportunity for hearing other information from other people prior to crafting this resolution that you're proposing, I believe, to adopt tonight, or at least considering. And so I would like to advocate for having more parties sit down and more information be presented and discussed. It is a new issue for ranchers in Cochise County, and I think it needs to be worked through. I think changes need to be asked for in the compensation program. But the current state of the proposal before you, I think, is not as good as it could be, as well considered. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'd like to add something, and to clear things up, we don't have a resolution that we're going to vote on tonight. The purpose of the work session was, I sit on the Eastern Arizona County Association, right? And so he came to give, they've been working on this issue for a long time. It's made up of all the Eastern Arizona counties. So because this became such a emotional issue so quick, I think in the past 2 months, we wanted to start getting information. We do plan on doing a resolution, but there's nothing that we have. In fact, this was, in a sense, to hear not only from, Pasquale, who many Phil is an expert. There are other experts that are more, say leaning right or leaning left. But tonight was the chance to hear the people speak and hear what their concerns. So I just want to clear up that there's not a resolution we're going to vote on tonight. Sure. We will be working on a resolution. We're not going to rush it. We're going to think it out, and we're going to make sure that we look at all the issues. So I just want to make sure you understood that.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
You're welcome.
And I hope you will listen to other sides before the resolution.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I worked on the environmental issues in D.C. for 10 years. So, okay.
All right, next up we have Miss Nancy Thomas. And she's on Teams.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Miss Thomas, you're good. You got 3 minutes.
Okay, I am Nancy Thomas, and I'm a licensed Arizona veterinarian, and I am opposed to the delisting or downlisting of the wolf. While some progress has been made in restoring the wild population of gray wolves, the numbers are not sufficient to reduce or eliminate their protected status. The loss of this amazing animal would cause significant changes in the Southwest ecosystems, primarily impacting the herbivore populations and the overall health of riparian areas. Without wolves, prey like elk and deer would likely increase in numbers, leading to overgrazing and degradation of vegetation in areas like streams and valleys. This could disrupt the delicate balance of the ecosystem and impact other species that rely on those habitats. There are many resources available to the ranchers to assist with depredation reimbursement, conflict prevention, carcass removal, and other consequences of sharing space with the wolves. Perhaps they need to be tweaked, but there are options and that could be addressed. However, many ranchers are only interested in what works best for them, not what works best for the native animals and plants. Yet another example of this conflict is the fight between ranchers and the need to protect our native wild horse population. I am on a national coalition of people trying to figure out how to address the roundup and slaughter of our native animals, our native horses. As mentioned previously, reducing the gray wolf population will have cascading consequences on the natural life cycle of herbivores and the plants they consume. Cattle that free graze on land once occupied by wild horses stay within a mile of the water sources. They stomp it down, they destroy the area, whereas horses range much further out and don't decimate the water holes like the cattle do. Similarly, reducing the wolf population will increase the herbivore population with similar consequences to vegetation and water resources. Nature had a plan. Why are cattlemen the only consideration when addressing how man can live with nature? Cattlemen make up a small portion of the population of Cochise County. These wolves have a right to be here, and many of us want them here. Remember that you represent the entirety of Cochise County, not just the ranchers. And then I'd like to make a few comments about what's been said previously. A quick Google search will tell you that wolves do not kill for sport. That was the first thing that came up. So I question the concept. I question that they kill for sport. I don't have all the training this gentleman stated repeatedly that he had, but I would like to research that a little bit more. My husband and I just bought 37 acres in Dragoon Mountain Ranch that borders the Coronado National Forest. We like the wildlife. We plan on putting out water for the wildlife. We have horses and we have dogs. And much like the gentleman that said, if I leave a beef stick in my truck and the dog eats it, then whose fault is that?
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Appreciate it. All right, next up we have Colleen Savage. Ms. Savage is on Teams as well. Are you there, Ms. Savage?
Can you hear me?
Yes, there you go, ma'am. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening. I don't have any fancy degrees or special research interests. 26 years ago, I bought a piece of land and surrounded by a cattle ranch. And I built my own house, and I've been living out here. I love nature. After the wolves were introduced, short time afterwards, the rancher was having problems losing his calves. They were being eaten as they're being born. So he asked Fish and Game to come out, and they put up some bait traps, and they took care of the problem. And I talked to the warden as he was finished with his trapping, and he said they had caught the largest coyote on record to that date. And I don't know, it's about 10 years ago. And he said it appeared to be a hybrid wolf and coyote. Well, you know, I've never been bitten by a wolf. I have been bitten by a pit bull. And on that same property, there's a man living there now that's breeding pit bull dogs. He doesn't have them in a fenced area. He has lets his dogs roam. And I'm really concerned that we have an overpopulation problem with dogs in this county. And I'm really concerned that one of these days, I'm going to open my door and I'm not going to see a Game of Thrones dire wolf, but I might see a pit bull wolf. So this is something I think people need to realize, that wolves, you know, they're dogs, and I've been around dogs all my life, and they're not too fussy when something's in heat. So that's something I think people need to realize, that wolves don't stay on public land, and they'll breed with anything that's willing to breed with. And I think we need to be thinking about these things if we're going to have that wild. We already have Africanized bees and all kinds of poisonous serpents. Do we really need wolves too? That's about all I have to say.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Next up is Miss Allison Morse.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, supervisors, and members of the public. My name is Allison Morse, and I'm a resident of Portal. Cochise County ranchers have incurred tremendous losses recently due to the extreme drought, lethal interactions with vehicular traffic, and a few confirmed depredations by wolves. Many more cattle die from starvation, disease, calving complications, and ingestion of toxic substances. While providing water for their own cattle, ranchers also offer relief to desperately thirsty wildlife, and for this I am grateful. If it weren't for the range cattle in our area, there would almost certainly be an increase of residential and commercial development, permanent man-made scars on our breathtaking natural landscape. But I'm also passionate about the protection and preservation of wildlife, their habitat, and native ecosystems. The Mexican gray wolf is part of our Creator's divine plan, and they deserve our respect. This is their home, and historically they have been a keystone species in our area, predating the introduction of cattle in the late 1800s. Livestock grazing on public land displaces native species, and conflicts with the Mexican wolf directly contributed to its near extinction in the 1970s. Many dedicated souls have worked hard to ensure that we don't repeat this carelessness. It's up to us now to figure out how to coexist with this extraordinary creature. State and federal resources are plentiful and should be utilized in good faith. There is money, education, and training available for conflict prevention, carcass removal, and depredation reimbursement. The Arizona Livestock Loss Board, Range Riders, and Livestock Indemnity Program can all address these issues. Ranchers have a responsibility to coexist with native wildlife on public lands that belong to all Americans. As supervisors, you represent everyone in this county, and that includes those of us who are genuinely excited to see wolves return to an area that belongs to them as much as it does to us. Mr. Chairman, I respectfully request that you share with us the number of people who chose not to speak today, but submitted comments expressing opposition to the board's consideration of downlisting, delisting, or defunding protections for the Mexican gray wolf. The public here deserves to know what the response has been to this issue. Thank you very much for your attention.
Next up, we have Anne Przenia, I believe. Is that, I hope I'm pronouncing it correct. Close. How do you say it? Oh. All right. All right, ma'am, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes. My name is Ann Presna. My husband and I own a ranch in Palominas adjacent to the San Pedro River. We have had our home there since 2002. I've enjoyed wolves as neighbors when I lived in the Chugach Mountains in Alaska, and I have traveled to Yellowstone National Park in the winter to see them at the Lamar Valley. I've worked in environmental policy and wildlife conservation throughout my professional life. I'm a partner in a law firm that has litigated against state governments to stop the killing of wolves. I'm also the co-founder of a nonprofit that advocates for wolves and other wildlife. I welcome wolves back on the landscape. I am aware of the critical role wolves and other predators play in restoring and maintaining biological diversity, and the role wolves can play in controlling chronic wasting disease by targeting sick animals. Now I'll go off script because you had asked, what do we want our county to look like? I've only been here for 25 years, but just looking at things that concern me and our county and we're all being affected by is loss of biodiversity and climate change. And there's a lot of public lands here, and I certainly think we should coexist with, ranching on our lands, but I think if we want to survive comfortably in a fast-changing world, I'm 74 years old and things are changing dramatically. I think for our public lands, we're probably going to have to maybe buy back some allotments, really restore some of the, native grasslands that have, unwittingly been hammered by livestock and it's exacerbated by, the drought and other conditions we have. And I think bringing back, things like the apex predators like wolves and others, have been very successful in some areas to restoring, our biodiversity. And I think even in Mexico, there's some stories of, ranching that's gone lightly and bringing back the predators in the grasslands have actually brought back some of the rains. So for me, like I said, I can see a world we need to coexist. We don't get rid of the ranching, but we really have to, moderate it, and particularly on the public lands, be mindful of how they impact that, and, think about restoring these grasslands and, what we can do to preserve what we have just by making changes in how we behave. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. President. All right, next up we have Dr. Alitris Niels. Did I pronounce that right? Ma'am, you got 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Hello, my name is Dr. Alitris Niels. It's a privilege to be able to talk with you. I'm an Arizona native born and raised on a working ranch. My doctoral dissertation focused on conflict mitigation between ranchers and predators, and my specialty is mammalian carnivores. I used to be the mammologist for the University of Arizona. I now direct an Arizona-based nonprofit, Conservation Catalyst, where we focus on working at the nexus between predators and people. I started working with Mexican gray wolves over 25 years ago at the Phoenix Zoo's breeding program. I have trapped wild wolves, and these wolves are so docile that we don't even immobilize or drug them when we attach radio collars. You couldn't pay me enough money to do this with a bobcat or even mini house cats. I have encountered wolves alone, on foot, and never once feared for my safety. I have only felt fortunate. We all know wolves are vital for ecosystems, but recent scientific research shows that just having apex predators like wolves on landscapes lessens the impacts of invasive species and even climate change. And we can all agree that this is the greatest threat we face here in southern Arizona. Over decades of working with ranchers and predators, I can tell you that coexistence is entirely possible. And in fact, more livestock are killed by domestic dogs than wolves. I am hired to deal with these conflicts with predators and people all over the world, and we are offering help to any local rancher in Cochise County concerned about wolves. Not only am I a scientist, but I'm also I also have an tourism-based bed and breakfast here in Cochise County. And data shows that wolves have contributed over 82 million annually to the Yellowstone economy through wildlife watching and tourism. Wolves are the most sought after animal tourists want to see in America. In fact, the only animal that tops wolves are jaguars. With wolves returning to Cochise County, we will be the only place in the entire U.S. with both wolves and jaguars. These species have rarely co-occurred for the past 100 years. The ecotourism potential for this in Cochise County is endless. This has the potential to be a huge conservation success story, where we are just often bombarded with bad news. The world is watching to see how this story unfolds. Let's have Cochise County be the leaders in coexistence. I urge you to support wolves and to support a greater future for Cochise County. Thank you for listening to me, and I greatly appreciate your time.
All right, thank you. All right, we're now halfway through our request to speak list, so this is going to be a good time to take a 5-minute break. So we will be back in here at 6:45. 6:45, so we stand in recess.
Excuse me, is there anyone there? Hello? 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 Is anyone back yet? Hello? Hello? Oh, look, I'm making a record. Hello? 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 Is anybody back yet? Hello? 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 Is anyone back yet? Hello? 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 Hello?
Yep, okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
Excuse me, please. Thank you. Can you go out there, somebody in the lobby, and tell people we are starting? Thank you.
Good job. All right, next speaker is going to be Aurelia Bugby Niels. Hope I pronounced that right. We had Dr. Niels and then Ms. Niels. There. Oh.
Hello, my name is Aurelia Bugby Niels, and the spirits know me as Skigago Piasu Squasis, the Blue Thunderbird Girl. I'm 8 years old and was born and raised in Arizona. I am an artist and a poet. I raise chickens and turkeys and train my ponies and dogs. I ride horses and just advanced to level 3. I am homeschooled, and this allows me to spend almost all of my days outside. I live on the bank of the San Pedro River and explore this river every day. I track wildlife and learn the languages of birds. There used to be wolves on this river, but they were all killed long ago, and the river misses them. I am also the founder of an organization called She Saves Species. Dr. Jane Goodall was our first member. I am here because I and everyone in my group loves wolves and all apex predators. Apex predators are animals on the top of the food web. These carnivores eat meat and help regulate everything, from deer to coyotes to even flowers and grasses. They are so important that scientists don't even know all of their values. Don't worry, I'll figure these out when I'm grown up. Unlike many people, I have been fortunate and have spent time with wild wolves. They make me so amazed and happy. Once we sat and watched a pack of wolves try to hunt pronghorns, but they didn't get any, and then dug for rodents. I can still close my eyes and imagine that I'm running with them. I don't understand why so many grown-ups are afraid of these wolves. They aren't big or scary at all. My dog at home, Toho, is much bigger than a wild wolf. Wolves and dogs are the same species, Canis lupus, and everyone loves dogs. How could you not? Please do everything you can to protect our amazing gray wolf. I want to grow up knowing there are wolves in my Cochise County. Your actions decide what world we inherit. Please remember us kids. Maybe small, but we are 100% of the future and we depend on you. It's a pleasure to be able to talk with you. Thank you for listening to me.
Who's your sidekick?
This is my sister.
And what's her name? Hi, Erin.
Oh,
All right. Thanks for coming, both of you. I appreciate it. All right.
love wolves. Thank you
All
for
right.
protecting them.
Okay. All right. Next up, we have Diane Davidson. Miss Davidson is on Teams. Miss Davidson, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. You have 3 minutes.
I'm a professional ecologist all my life, but retired to Cochise County, and I'm not going to deal with science, but rather emotion. I live at the mouth of Cave Creek Canyon in Portal, across the creek from an eco lodge dependent on natural history tourism. Fed deer are super abundant. On a dog walk one evening last March, I came across a recent strange deer kill with the abdomen cleanly removed and the carcass otherwise intact until a bear removed it the next day. The predator was evidently not a cougar. A day and a half later, a herd of deers feeding in the yard took off at a rate I'd never seen before, and a minute afterwards, a pair of wolves marched very authoritatively through the yard. Together with encounters with a charging cougar, an injured bear, and a rabid fox on my property, and with jaguar while working in the Amazon, the wolf experience has become one of the stories that defines who I am, to myself, to my friends and family, and also the reason I purchased land here 30 years ago and continue to live here 16 years after retirement. Many Portal neighbors are retired biologists and feel similarly. The owner of the Eco Lodge was extremely excited to relate the wolf sighting to clients at his business. I have rancher friends and am sympathetic to their concerns about predators and their need for compensation. But wolves are a part of the ecosystem and a plus for naturalists such as me. My greatest concern for the future of ranchers and naturalists is climate change, which is decimating all native habitats in Cochise County. I just paid to have a dozen dead native pines removed from my property, future blowtorches in the next wildfire. If the future of ranching is dim, this darkness is not attributable to wolves, but to the extraordinary heat and lack of rainfall. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up is Craig Miller. Mr. Miller, are you in person?
I am, yes.
Oh, there you are, sir. Thanks.
I'm Craig Miller. I'm the regional representative for Defenders of Wildlife. We're a national conservation organization. I've been an Arizona resident for 35 years. 30 years ago, I lived here in Cochise County, just outside of Elfrida. I currently live in Navajo and Pima counties. I've been involved with the Mexican Wolf Program since before it was a Mexican Wolf Program. Growing up, one of my heroes was Marlin Perkins. One thing that struck me is when Marlin Perkins, he was the spokesperson for Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, a gentleman who traveled the globe and document the demise of ecosystems while storytelling about the fascinating world of wildlife and their habitats. Upon his retirement, Marlin and his wife Carol founded the Wild Canid Research and Survival Center. It's one of the first facilities, in addition to the Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum, to house Mexican wolves to prevent them from disappearing entirely. At that time, the Endangered Species Act had just been passed in part to reflect the values of a society concerned about the footprint that civilization was having on wild nature and wild animals. You can't get closer to extinction than having one female remaining in the wild, and that's the story of Mexican wolves. And through careful breeding and collaboration between dozens of private institutions across the country, with coordination from federal and state agencies and dozens of other private cooperators, this form of life has been saved from extinction. If you were to take all of the biomass of land mammals and compare them, domestic versus wild, you could fit all of the domestic animals, livestock, cattle, poultry, sheep, approximately into a shape the size of a beach ball. And all of the wild mammals, grizzly bears, wolves, jaguars, land mammals, into a shape approximately the size of a marble. Wrap your mind around that for just a moment, please. I know that's difficult to visualize here because in southeastern Arizona, we are in one of the most spectacular bastions of nature and one of the most beautiful places in the world. It's one of the reasons why it's so frequently sought out by naturalists. I work for Defenders in part to help find solutions to the conflicts between human activities, primarily agriculture, and wildlife conservation. I hope that the resolution that you develop focuses on constructive solutions to real-world problems. I participated in the working meeting last week. I was struck by a number of important points that were left out. I would like the future opportunity to share some of the programs and resources that are currently available to help producers proceed with agriculture in a way that is not economically damaging. I've left my number with you, and we'd be happy to support on-the-ground conservation that promotes agriculture and coexistence with wildlife. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next up, we have Erica, no last name given on Teams. Erica, are you there? I hope it's the right Erica. Hope we don't have two Ericas. Erica?
Yeah, I'm Erica. I don't know why it didn't say my last name. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Great. So my name is Erica Prather, and I represent the group Wild Earth Guardians. I'm here today on behalf of about 200,000 members across the country, and specifically in Arizona, we have about 5,000 members. And I'm really glad for a lot of the conversation today. I want to thank the board for opening this dialogue up and making special note of like the past, present, and future dynamics. One of the reasons I'm here is because I'm an organizer across the landscape, especially the one that Pascal was representing. I meet with ranchers, tribal members, all kinds of folks, Forest Service people, you name it. I meet with people, even if they don't always want to meet with me. And so I have a deep compassion for rural folks and the struggles that they're going through right now. And I would venture to guess that if we dug a little deeper, this isn't about wolves at all. It's about areas that are left behind economically and by both of our parties, our political parties. And as a labor organizer, I sympathize deeply with working class people. And I'm confident we can find a solution together that's centered on a habitable planet and a sustainable industry. My organization has worked tirelessly also on permit retirement, helping ranchers get rid of their leases. The ranchers that I've spent time with in eastern Arizona, it's really broken my heart. They don't have kids to take over the business. They're ranching on public lands. I want to be very clear about that. With subsidies and all of that, they are not turning a profit. They've had to open their ranching to entertainment functionally to try to just break even. And that's just a really heartbreaking existence. We need to find a just transition for ranchers to get out of the industry and to provide a safe space for them to do that so that they're not shamed. Additionally, I want to share some data points. Someone mentioned, I think it was Aaron, that there has not been a confirmed wolf-human conflict or kill at all. We actually know that depredation in total per 100 wolves is down. It's on the decline, and that doesn't necessarily constitute an emergency. I'm so happy Craig is there. There's amazing range riding programs that Defenders not only provides, but it's employment for White Mountain Apache tribal members. Folks are super grateful for that work. So it's actually job creation through this. And I'd love to see this much, energy and time put into finding real solutions to help working class people in rural America. I'm dedicated to finding those types of solutions and a path forward. And I think that, one other solution that we could explore together is lifting the artificial I-40 boundary. If we want wolves to move out and spread the love, we could get rid of that silly boundary that was just quite lazy and doesn't represent actual science.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Next up, we have Mr. William M. Riggs, the fourth. There we go.
Good evening, y'all.
Evening.
Thank you for having us.
Yep.
I'd like to speak a little bit on this, but I want to keep my focus to Cochise County because that's why we're here. Cochise County does not have the prey base to support packs of wolves. Cochise County historically, through my family talking to the older generations, never had packs of wolves. It was kind of a borderlands area. They traveled through, they'd come up, a Lobo would come up, travel through and leave. Yeah, they were here, but there's no prey base. Never has been the prey base until now with the livestock industry. That is their main prey here today. And we need to stay focused on what are they going to do introducing a population of wolves. They're going to decimate the wildlife until there's nothing left or eat cattle. That's all there is. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife has admitted to me personally and Game and Fish that they've never done a prey-based study here. Never. They thought it was a good idea. And this is recent, in the last 2 months, in talks with them. Half of their stuff on their list of things for ranchers to do to reduce conflict with wolves and livestock is illegal for most of the ranchers in Cochise County to do, if not all. So, yes, there's some things out there to try, but what they're telling us to do is or a hot wire on the bottom of our fence to keep the wolves out of our livestock. It's wrote on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife page. If you did that on a forest allotment or a state land, then it's a non-wildlife friendly fence. They'll write you up for it or give you a ticket or take your allotment. There's a lot of line items that are that way. So there's no prey base in Cochise County to support packs of wolves. It's historically always been an area that they passed through and went on. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. All right. Oh,
Chairman,
do you have a question for Mr. Riggs?
Mr. Riggs? One of the things that I brought up on the work session is I asked that question, had there been a prey-based analysis done?
Yes, ma'am.
And in other areas, they had done them. Am I correct? Like up in the northern part of Arizona?
Recently, yes.
But when they introduced these wolves recently, there was nothing like that done. I just want to clarify that because, you
That
hear
is
a
correct.
lot of different things, but I think that that's the one thing that we can definitely all agree on, both sides for and against, is that there was no prey-based analysis.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
All right, next up, we have Mr. George Marin. Hope I said that right, sir. Thank you.
Everybody's covered everything pretty much right down to the nail. The wolves have been here forever. They've been here long before. They never have been extinct, aren't going extinct. I made your meeting the other day, and with the Frenchman that I could barely understand.
Pascal.
Yeah, thank you. He put all of his factors up on the board, but he neglected to say he was working with Mexico, and it wouldn't work because Mexico was this and that and the other. Hell, it ain't going to work. They're shooting them over there, fascinate, turn them loose. So, and I've done a little bit of research on this. This is just a money pit, a furry little money pit like you watch on TV, only these are wolves. There's no room for them anymore, never has been. As Mr. Riggs said, these wolves come and go. They never stayed here. And I can pretty much vouch for that because I've been here for a day or two myself. And I won't hold your time up because it looks like there's a lot of people wanting to talk. You guys have a good evening.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. All right, next up is Mr. Don Lackner. Mr. Lackner.
Thank you. My name is Don Lackner, and I'm current president of the Cochise Graham Categories. I want to thank you all for taking time to hear and address our concerns regarding the Mexican wolf and the negative impact it has having on ranches and businesses and communities that support our industry. As Mr. Riggs said, the prey base is just not there. Wildlife numbers are down considerably, thus making livestock a big part of the food chain. They say there is compensation, but to find livestock in some of our terrain to have it verified a wolf kill will be next to impossible. Respectfully, I'm asking members of the Board of Supervisors to consider our petition to delist and defund the Mexican wolf. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, next up is Mr. David Thompson.
Thank you guys for having this town hall meeting and listening to everybody's take on the wolf. I'm David Thompson, cattle rancher at the northern end of the Chiricahuas on the west side. My family's been ranching in that area since 1892, and my wife's family has been there since 1879. Our ranch encompasses approximately 20 square miles, and 95% of it is deeded acres. The federal government has infringed upon our private property rights by introducing the wolf without consulting us or allowing us to provide any input on the matter. As Supervisor Gomez asked in the May 8th work session and was talked about here by Mr. Riggs, we don't have an adequate prey base. And the study was never conducted, and in the early 2000s, Arizona Game and Fish informed us when they were introducing the wolves in eastern Arizona and New Mexico. Arizona Game and Fish informed us that they would never put them in Cochise County because there was the absence of a minimum of 5 ungulate species. And so either they changed their rules, and since they started introducing them, or they added cattle and horses to their list. Wolves were released on Forest Service land, but they don't stay there. They move off on private lands pretty quick. As somebody said, they travel over 60 miles a day, and they prey on livestock. The government has created an undue hardship for ranchers, expecting us to keep their wolves out of our livestock. It's impossible for my wife and I to watch 4 herds on 20 square miles 24 hours a day. I've heard mention, Mr. Riggs mentioned the utilization of electric fences, and they're testing wireless fencing where they want us to put a collar on our cows, kind of like the dog fences and stuff. And that's just not possible. They want us to keep our cattle in a small group, and that's just the cafeteria style for the wolf once they come in, and all of our cattle are in one area. And so I think I have a better solution would be to put the wireless collars on the wolves and keep them in a certain area so we all know where they're at. And it's impossible to properly manage our cattle ranches with the uncertainty and unpredictability of this experimental Mexican wolf program.
Right.
I support a resolution against it. Thank you,
sir. All right, next up is Miss Tina Thompson. Miss Thompson.
Thank you.
As you said, I am Tina Thompson. I'm a registered voter in District 3, fifth generation rancher. My family came to Arizona in the late 1880s, and in their journals they talk about Lobos north of the Chiricahuas, but not a problem in the Chiricahuas. And other historical material I have read talk about wolves passing through the Chiricahuas, but not having a permanent residence. This is probably because there wasn't the necessary ungulate prey base to support a permanent wolf population in the Chiricahuas. With an insufficient prey base to support wolves in the Chiricahuas, wolves will decimate the prey that currently supports the bear and mountain lion food source, ultimately forcing all predators to go to cattle for a food source. A northern Arizona rancher estimates a loss of $325,000 in 1 year in indirect costs. This does not include direct costs of livestock depredation. Ranchers are not being fairly compensated for this loss. With the wolf reintroduction, if you have to bear the consequences and financial burden of a feel-good program. People support wolves over ranchers and farmers now because they have plenty to eat. If we continue down this road, there will not be plenty to eat. From 2017 to 2022, there was a 12% decrease in farms and ranches in Arizona, and nearly 107,000 beef cattle producers went out of business in the U.S. Wolf introductions contribute to these statistics. The financial devastation that wolves will cause to ranchers will increase the sale of small family ranchers to development that will reduce habitat for all wildlife. Ranchers provide water sources for wildlife. If you put ranchers out of business, those water sources will go away because USF Forest Service cannot and will not maintain those water sources. Dr. Savine with U.S. Fish and Wildlife testified to the Congressional Natural Resource hearing on March in 2025 that wolves are known wolves that are known cattle killers should be removed from the range, and that is not happening in the Chiricahuas. We have 2 known cattle killers ranging in the Chiricahuas now that have not been removed. I urge you to adopt a resolution against the reintroduction of wolves in Cochise County. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, next up we have Mr. Philip Klump.
Thank you, guys. My name is Philip Klump. I know most of these people behind me. The U.S. government paid for the eradication of these wolves back in the 40s, 50s, 60s. Okay? I got to take my glasses off so I can see this. Thank you for this meeting. About 40 years ago, when the Game and Fish first started discussing the experimental non-essential wolf reintroduction, lots of the ranchers told them we were not in favor and did not want the wolves. They also told the Game and Fish there was not any prey base for them to eat, but our livestock. Did anyone listen to us? No, they did not. The ranchers have once again been forced into a problem we did not want. As far as the payment for the wolf kills, the process needs to be easier, and it needs to be paid for the livestock. The payment needs to be immediate and use an up-to-date market report. Not one 10 years ago where we were getting $500 a cow. Now we're getting $5,000 a cow. Not quite 5,000, but it's pretty dang close. Okay. These wolves can cause substantial economic loss to the livestock producer in a matter of hours. All they got to do is start chasing and we lose money quick. The Constitution says we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which in this problem is taking away that from us ranchers. I ask that you pass this resolution and support the other counties in this fight to stop this problem. As far as overgrazing on the public land, I've heard this for 5 or 6 different people. If you are overgrazing, your allotment manager will take you and kick your butt off there in a hurry. I've been there, done that, seen it. As far as you, those of you who want and support these wolves, please put them in your backyard and take care of them. We don't want the problem. The cattlemen, we feed all the animals that come across the property. We feed them, we water them, we don't put them to bed at night, but we take care of them. Because otherwise, if we don't water them, our cows don't get no water. And all the ranchers in this room make a living off this land with their cattle. The rancher feeds every carnivore that's out there because there is nothing else for them to eat. There's no deer, there's no rabbits, and I concede my time, and thank you very much for have a good evening.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Mr. Ed Ashurst.
Thank you. I'm 74, been here my whole life, been in Arizona. When they introduced wolves a year or so ago, 100% of the water that was pumped for the antelope and the deer and the bear and the lions was pumped at my expense. There was virtually no groundwater. 100% of the wolf depredations on my ranch have taken place on the 27,000 deeded acres that I take care of. The ranch that I'm on has produced, and I can prove it, close to $2 million in taxable income. There are several families living there. We shop locally, we pay our taxes, and we pay our bills. We voted for you. There's a lot of talk about public lands. So-called public lands, Forest Service permits, state trust lands, whatever, all of the water improvements on those lands have been paid for by the ranches. Real estate agents sell ranches that are based upon public land. Banks loan money to prospective buyers of these ranches. 100% of the water right today, 100% of the water that the lions are drinking and the antelope and the deer on public lands that I take care of is pumped by me. The dirt tanks, the ponds, the dams, the pipelines were all put in at my expense. So we need to change some laws if these so-called public lands that belong to the retired people at Portal, if I can go to the bank and borrow money to acquire a piece of that land, or some crooked real estate agent can sell me a ranch that's public land that I have no control over. So there is more control and or authority given to a rancher who ranches on public lands. We contribute to the tax base of the county. The ranch that I'm on, and I can prove this, is by far the largest taxpayer in an entire school district. And we pay our taxes. So if you let this wolf nonsense continue, you will destroy the tax base of the county. There's a lot of Bambi, Walt Disney worldview going on about this stuff, but the truth is this is about money. So
thank you, sir.
And I darn sure can tell the difference between a wolf and a coyote.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. All right, next up is Miss Tammy Sue Smith.
Good afternoon, y'all. My name is Tammy Smith, and I stand here before you representing 8 generations and 156 years of cattle ranching on the same piece of dirt right here in Cochise County. I want you to look at this diagram that Stephen and I put together. It all starts with the rancher, the cattle producer. He owns the cow, he feeds the cow, he waters the cow, and ironically, the wolf. He takes care of the cow, he raises her calf, he sells her calf if there's one left to sell, and then he pays taxes to the government. The taxes pay for the wolf program, which in turn pays for the protection of the wolf. The rancher's taxes pay for the rubber stamp funding to the non-governmental organizations or NGOs that sue U.S. Fish and Wildlife every time they can. With the help of a radical rogue judge, they win every time. And last but not least, taxpayers also pay for the NGO lawyers. So we, the hardworking taxpayer, are paying for the very program that is trying to put us out of business. We have to ask ourselves, who is really in control here? The U.S. Fish and Wildlife or the environmental NGOs? And then finally, the wolf eats the cow that paid the taxes that probably never got a confirmed wolf kill or compensation. The job of the rancher is to feed the nation, not the wolf. The buck literally stops here. Now it's going to take 3 to 4 years to replace that cow and restart the production cycle. This is not sustainable for the rancher, and you know what is so frustrating? It's a 100% preventable. In the next poster, you can see the reality of this cruel apex predator. The wolf is a nefarious killer that doesn't always kill because it's hungry. The wolf is notorious for spree and sport killing for fun and for training purposes, leaving its victim in some cases untouched. On the flip side, they are also known to consume while alive, eating very little and moving on to the next. It might be of interest to you to know that most of these photos were taken right here in Cochise County. We never had this problem until the wolves were secretly released. Folks, obviously this is not a fluffy puppy that we're dealing with. I wish it was. That would mean that we didn't have a problem, and frankly, we wouldn't be here right now. Teddy Roosevelt, our nation's greatest conservation president, once said, "The wolf is a beast of waste and desolation." Here in Cochise County, we are under the 10J rule, and by its own definition, it is experimental and totally non-essential. The wolf serves no purpose in Cochise County and is injurious to agriculture and is a viable threat to rural citizens. It is imposing undue economic hardship and is threatening our legacy and our way of life. This is why our family is asking you to support a nationwide initiative to defund, delist, revoke, and recategorize. And thank you very much for listening to the voice of your constituents. And remember, the duty is ours.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. All right, next up we have Shaylyn Clemson. Shaylyn Clemson. Ms. Clemson.
My name is Shay Clemson, and my kids are the 8th generation on that same land. I come up here because it is important. I don't like public speak, but here I am. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the love that my kids have for ranching. That is what they desire to do their entire life. And there is no reason that we should let the wolf mess that up for them. This is what they love to do. And I want to also touch on a little bit, you know, people talk about more money, more funds, whether it's a confirmed death, a probable death, which we know that most of them are unknown. So in our personal experience for some of the investigations taking place on the cattle on the ranch, say there's a confirmed wolf killed a cow, maybe 50 yards away there's the calf. Some of the excuses of why they could not confirm it was because either there was the bite marks on the back, and they claimed that wolves do not do that. They do not attack from behind, so they will not take a tail. They will not get them by the tail head, by the hip. They don't do that. So I'm going to just start with that as kind of an example. So here's a few reasons that they gave us. So the wolf also has the same bite mark as a pup as a grown adult. Just very conflicting things here. One of the guy doing the observation, he said that there was one instance where he remembered seeing where a cow actually turned to kick the wolf, defending her calf. So anyone that's been around cows know that they do not turn and kick. They hit you head on. Just his knowledge of this, he's very sweet, very smooth talking. He says he will shoot you straight. He says, trust the science, as we've heard many times tonight. I let you think on that when we've heard that statement before, trust the science. And it just so happens to be that his wife is the Arizona wolf biologist. So there's a conflicting interest there. The other thing I want to touch on is the health concerns. They are known to carry over 50 diseases, some being deadly. They're not bringing anything useful to Cochise County. And I just urge you to run with us to defund and delist. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Hagen Clemson.
I am 17 years old and my name is Hagen Clemson. I'm an 8th generation rancher. I am here to tell you about my first experience with the Mexican gray wolf. My brother and I were the first ones to find 5 dead cows that were sport killed by these wolves. These 5 cows were killed in about a 50-foot radius. As time went on, we found 11 head total that were killed very close to this same area. This is not something any rancher wants to find. The most sickening part of all this is to hear these people try to defend the wolf. I know for a fact these cattle were killed by these wolves. Beef is what feeds America, not the wolf. These wolves are just a tool for these crooks. The whole goal for these crooks is to get rid of the ranchers and farmers. They're after control. Look over here at this map. You can find this map anywhere on the internet. They want to kick us off of our land. If they kick us off of our land, who will feed America? Nobody. The cow-calf operation I live on is 100% deeded ground. That's pretty brave for them to color over our land. This map they have has no plans for agriculture and goes against everything I stand for. And it does not and will not suit me. Does it suit you? There are 2 kinds of wolves on this land, the 4-legged wolf and the 2-legged wolf. In this case, I'm afraid the 2-legged wolf is more deadly. In my future, in my pasture, they aren't welcome in. I would like to point out, too, that all these cows were killed right here next to each other, and they confirmed one of these cows. They're laying in this room, and one was confirmed a wolf kill. What did all the other die from? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clemson. Next up is Mr. Stephen Smith. Mr. Smith, are you? Oh, there you are, sir. All right.
Thank you all for having us here. You've met some of my family. This is kind of important to us. Tells you how proud we are of our history in the cattle business in Cochise County. We're here today to ask and encourage our Board of Supervisors to help bring an end to the wolf reintroduction and protection. I was not here for Mr. Berlioz's presentation last Tuesday, but I watched most of it on the computer later. I think it's ridiculous that we are expected to feed their wolves until they reach their goal number. We are expected to help destroy our ranches and way of life and not complain at all. Here in the southeast corner of Cochise County, 3 ranches have lost 25 to 30 head in about 4 months. This was to 2 collared wolves and possibly, nobody knows, a couple of uncollared ones. The goal number of wolves for Arizona and New Mexico is 320. To my knowledge, no one has said how many they plan for Cochise County. That doesn't really matter anyway because their numbers keep changing. The number of wolves they wanted in Mexico isn't working out because the ranchers and hunters are killing them as fast as they can. The plan for Mexico wolves will probably get moved to us. So how much livestock are we going to feed these wolves until their goal is reached? And that's only the beginning of the feast. I personally got sick and tired of Mr. Berlioz telling us we have no recourse. Basically, we are subjects of the feds. Our founding fathers gave us a government system to give the individual rights. My prayer today is that the Cochise County Board of Supervisors, the state of Arizona, will help us before the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and their NGO accomplices make criminals out of us. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. All right, next up, we have Mr. John Ladd. Mr. Ladd.
Thank you for having us. I have one thing. This program started out with certain numbers and certain goals, and they've met them, but they've kept changing the numbers. And I think the program has been a success, and it needs to be downgraded, defunded, and delisted. They've met all their goals. They don't know how many wolves they have. A lot of the collars aren't working on the supposed collared wolves they know about. It's a privilege to live in America and be able to say what you can, freedom of speech. Tonight there was a lot of comments made about all the programs and all the subsidies that you ranchers can get. They're broke. They don't offer them. We've asked for range riders. We've asked for everything that Eastern Arizona has. There's no money and there's no manpower. But you can come up here and say whatever you want to say, but the facts are the facts. The program is broke. Defund and delist. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, we have Mr. Jose Torres. There you go.
Thank you for letting me speak. They call me Jose, and I grew up in California and in a rural area and worked on ranches and farms since I could climb up on a horse. And my first encounter with gray wolves is I was a newlywed and went to pick up a stallion, and the rancher talked me into taking this sled dog that they had, and it wouldn't fit in with their dog, so took it home. And well, my wife was raising registered goats, and she got out of business in a couple of days. But I had to sleep in the doghouse I built for this dog for a few days. And Kurt took a section of land in the San Bernardino National Forest, the San Jacinto District, and we'd always have cattle that we lost through the mountain lions during the calving season, and they'd come down and my mules would go crazy, and I'd go out there and sing and stuff, and feel bad because I chased them away, if you ever heard me sing. And they'd go over to the neighbor's ranch, and they lost some of their llamas, and they got a state hunter to come in, and they killed this lion. It was a mother had a den with babies about 200 yards from my front door. Later, I was working on a ranch up in Tent Sleep, Wyoming, and he had 1,000 head of cattle, about 4,000 head of sheep. And we woke up one morning and there was sheep all over the side of the hill. And this wolf had come in and just killed them for pleasure, I guess, or food. But he called the state hunter, and the state hunter came in, and he stayed out there a couple of days in the pasture. And he finally saw the wolf and followed it, and she had a den. So he threw in a cyanide bomb and covered the entrance and killed the mom and the babies. And that was done there. But I think hunters, ranchers and cattle and cattlemen can get along with wolves and stuff. I mean, there's going to be a certain amount of loss of cattle, but the wolves have been here for a long time, and we have to learn to get along together. And I think it could be done. Anyways, thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you. All right, next up we have Miss Amy Monet. I hope I said that right.
Thank you very much for calling us in and everyone showing up.
Yes, the First Amendment is very powerful and is our right, everyone's right. I've heard so much information, and when I was a little older than Aurelia, the elder of the two sisters that were here, I don't know from whence they came, but ever since that age, around a few minutes ago, wolves and orcas have been the animals that have called to me the most. And was it the young Mr. Clemson? I had a thing for those two apex beings, animals, creatures. And I just, we humans, and I heard someone mention stewardship of the land, stewardship of creation. We all live on one planet. For the time being, this is where we can eat, breathe. We are all, I'm going to say, God's creatures. We were created for a reason, for a purpose, in my experience. And I believe it would behoove us, we humans, and all of the rest of the creation, if we can work together. Over the years, I've read, studied about specific breeds being used. And someone mentioned, I think it was the last speaker, llamas being used to ward off predators. Have we tried everything there is to try to live in harmony? Again, with climate change, things are happening faster, and we're all going to have to learn to survive. As apex predators, all of us, human and non-human, we do our best to survive. And there is enough for all, yet that pool of things with which to survive is shrinking, and we have to wake up and say, wait a minute, how long can we do this? And I appreciate the ranchers. I am not vegan, so I appreciate what you do. And my thought is looking at the money that goes to commercial farms, huge factory farms, and allot that money to you all. It's like money is there. Is there the will? And how do we choose to spend or decimate?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go back to Miss Knott, Cheryl Knott, who was online, who wasn't able to unmute in time. Is Miss Knott, are you there? You'll have an opportunity to speak if you can. She's still on, Laura?
I don't see her.
You don't see her? All right. Well, that rounds up our list of speakers tonight. I forgot what the lady was that asked what the breakout was. I had a list of 9 people that provided comment that requested not to speak. All of those were in favor of supporting the wolf and in opposition of delisting or downlisting. And then tonight, it was almost exactly 50-50, although those opposed to delisting or downlisting, or what would be in favor of the wolf, was 23 from the count I took, and then those that supported delisting or were opposed to the wolf was exactly at 20. So there was a little bit of, and that against the list included these folks, by the way. So it was pretty close. It was a difference of 3. And 4 of the people that spoke in favor of the wolf and against delisting were from outside Cochise County on that list too. So if you take that into account, it was slightly in favor of the support of the resolution to delist or downlist the wolf. We're going to do closing comments now. I'll start, and then we'll go to Mr. Crosby, and then we'll wrap up with Ms. Gomez. Couple things that I've noticed, and I mentioned them in the working session. We talked about the First Amendment here tonight, but there's another amendment that may not get as much attention, and that's the Fifth Amendment. And inside the Fifth Amendment, there's something called the Takings Clause. And the Takings Clause requires that the federal government, every time they impose what would be a restriction on private property or a taking of private property, that they're required by the Constitution to duly compensate any individual where that taking occurs. And I am astonished that anybody, let alone congressmen who swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution, would allow a process to occur where only 75% of the market value for a loss of private property would be compensated. To me, that's just insane. So I will ensure that this resolution ensures that 100% compensation for any loss, even remotely considered. And that's the other thing that I was astonished about as we were briefed during the working session about the evidence of depredation is astonishing to me. As one of the younger gentlemen mentioned tonight, you have a dead animal that was clearly killed by a wolf, and you have 3 or 4 others in close proximity, or you have a wolf kill a mile away, and then you find another dead animal with wolf tracks and scat around it, and somehow that isn't related to a wolf kill. I think that's got to be severely examined, and we'll address that in the resolution as well. I also think that based on the evidence and the data that I was granted by both sides, I received several emails from people that are part of the recovery effort, is that the recovery area, the initial recovery area for the wolf has been expanding. We recently saw the lawsuit with the above Interstate 40 that was denied by the court to expand the recovery range above Interstate 40. I think we should also see something that restricts the recovery area below the Mogollon Rim because, again, as Ms. Gomez stated and a couple other folks, the prey base down here is just not sufficient. I do a lot of hunting, and I cover a lot of ground, and I could tell you that deer are much faster than elk, and pronghorn, obviously, are much faster than elk. It is easier for a wolf to capture an elk than it would be a pronghorn antelope or a deer. So when they can't catch those faster animals, they start looking for targets of opportunity, and that would lend one to believe that the next slowest animal out there is cattle. So that's why cattle just straight up become a target. And we've seen evidence that they are hitting cattle. There's no one, I don't think, that would dispute that. So the question is how do we strike that balance? I would think keeping wolves out of the county would be one good start, at least out of Cochise County, if we can't do the entire state. This is also the most populated county within the wolf recovery area, and people aren't taking into the account that when you have a large population, you're going to see a larger interaction compared to like Greenlee County that's got, I don't know, was it 9,000 people in Greenlee County? And a heck of a lot more public land and Forest Service land. So when you come to a county that's got a lot of private property, some of the ranchers here tonight will tell you they've got 18 square miles, 20 square miles of deeded land, and they've got wolves coming on to their private property, which, by the way, again, the Constitution also says that, you know, we have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness defined in the Constitution is the acquiring of property. And that property is land, and that property is also cattle. And when that property is taken, that private property is taken, that is clearly an infringement on an individual's constitutional rights. And the federal government is obligated to compensate anybody for a loss or to make right any right violations where those rights are violated. And I want to make sure that the resolution that we propose includes that strong language in there, because I clearly do not see that occurring right now with the current Rule 10J and the management of this wolf. I've also done a little homework on the wolf population in the northern part of the country, and where it's been downlisted and delisted, and it's now, wolves are being actively hunted. And it is actually quite an economically beneficial program up there. And if you see some of the prices that wolf tags are going for in Wyoming and Montana, and the amount of tourism that is bringing in, the hunting economics that occurs, and is a hunter who pays a significant amount of taxes on ammunition and firearms, which also goes to the Fish and Wildlife Service, which is also used to support this wolf program, I would think that that would also be a viable option to consider. And that's why I think the resolution should contain something along the lines of at least transferring the management of the wolf population in Arizona to the Arizona Game and Fish Commission so they can conduct regulation of that species, to include, if necessary, relocating wolves somewhere else, or in cases of some of the ranchers here where we have clearly problem wolves, to allow hunting of those problem wolves, to remove those wolves. The behavior of animals that are hunted changes dramatically because they learn to fear humans. And we've seen this with mountain lions and other apex type predators, that when they're hunted, they tend to stay away from populated areas and avoid human reaction. There's actually mitigation efforts that are used by ranchers in other states to keep mountain lions off of their property by hiring hunters with dogs to pursue these mountain lions and not kill them. They just pursue them to chase them back into higher elevations or back into the more remote backcountry of those various states, and it's an effective tool. Without hunting and without creating that perception to that animal that he is no longer the apex predator and he needs to fear human interaction, they will not fear humans. Therefore, they will come down into areas where humans are, and they will attack cattle and pets and other animals. So I think something that influences the behavior has to be looked at as well, and I don't think that's quite being taken into account with regard to this recovery program. The other thing that I've seen from the evidence and the testimony that I've heard from people is that funding influences behavior. And that's true for all of us. You know, people vote with their wallet. You hear that all the time. When you see individuals whose livelihood depends on federal funding for a grant to do this study or this management, that management, sure, they're gonna advocate for that. I don't blame them one bit. It's their economic livelihood. But you have to look at the other side of the equation, that you have ranchers and farmers in this state that also have an economic stake in their livelihood, which is to raise cattle on their private property or leased property for the purposes of feeding their families and pursuing their happiness. So government needs to strike that balance, and I have not seen that balance. It is unfortunately tilted right now, in my opinion, heavily towards the wolf recovery effort. We have to balance this out. Ranchers need to have just as much rights as the wolves have, and that I just don't see that occurring. I'm not asking to wipe out the wolves. I think there is a balance that can be struck there, but it is not occurring very well in Cochise County. And again, because of the prey base and because of the high number of population and the number of ranchers and the animals that those ranchers tend to, it is creating a problem, and the federal government has to step in. And I think we also need to have our state game and fish department step in and begin a more aggressive regulation of this problem here in southern Arizona. And again, we talked about several people talked about private versus public land. And again, a lot of the ranching in Cochise County is done on private land. Some of it is on state trust land leases, some of it's on Forest Service leases, but a lot of where these issues are occurring are on private property. And again, there are some exceptions to allow the taking of wolves on private property if there is a witnessing of a wolf in the act of taking cattle, or if there's a threat to humans or other animals. But I think that needs to be better defined, and I think the courts are going to need to weigh in on that. And I don't want to encourage a rancher to become the test case for that case. So I think we would need to take a civil route and look at maybe some litigation on behalf of the residents of Cochise County by the county attorney's office. And we've spoken with the county attorney's office about possibly working with the other eastern Arizona counties to file a class action lawsuit on behalf of those affected by the reintroduction of this wolf into Cochise County. So we will continue to take input over the next week if you want to provide myself or my colleagues additional emails with your opinion, we're more than welcome to take it. We're going to also formulate the resolution that will then have one more opportunity. We'll post it on the county's website. Everyone will have an opportunity to look at it. And then at that meeting where that resolution is going to be either approved or not, we will again allow additional public comment for everybody to comment on it, because we appreciate and respect everybody's opinion and their right to have their voice heard and to redress their government for grievances, which again is the First Amendment, which we talked about tonight. So I look forward to that opportunity. And again, I think that our job is to provide the information to our elected leadership at the state and federal level so that we can affect that balance. As Thomas Jefferson once said, your liberty ends where, or my liberty ends where your nose begins. So I can do whatever I want until I come up to that point where I punch you in the nose, and then I cross that line. And that's where government needs to step in to protect the liberty of both sides. And I'm not seeing the protection of liberty on both sides right now. So I think we do need to do something about it, and formulating that resolution to accomplish that will be my purpose and my goal. So that's all I have to say. I'll hand it off to Mr. Crosby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is what we swore an oath to, the Constitution. So I'm going to talk about that just a little bit. In 2021, I was able to pass this resolution. I'm not going to read it all, but it includes, whereas the United States Constitution is the most remarkable political document in history, therefore be it resolved that Cochise County affirms itself to be a constitutional county. So until some Board of Supervisors revokes this resolution, it's in place. And so I think that's a good thing. And that's the way we're going to treat it. Last time I talked about the circular powers of the federal government and how I have seen it working, and that is the judicial branch claims the unlimited power of Congress. Congress further passes this presumptively obtained unlimited power to the executive branch, and the executive branch, in this case being the Secretary of Agriculture, has this unlimited power over the states, which violates states' rights in Article 4, Section 3, and I say that is obviously federal overreach. There was a word spoken about the Supremacy Clause, and I do believe that the Supremacy Clause is in this Constitution. It's Article 6. And I believe that it applies to the enumerated powers of the Constitution in Article 1, Section 8, and it is not a matter of all state laws that may contradict federal regulations. It is, where does the federal government have authority according to this Constitution? And so I'm going to read something that I call the Nothing Clause. And as I said, I believe the Supremacy Clause exists, and here it's in the Constitution. So here's Article 4, Section 3. Nothing in this Constitution shall be so construed as to prejudice any claims of the United States or any particular state. So as I said, I believe the Supremacy Clause is part of the Constitution, and it says nothing in this Constitution, including the Supremacy Clause, shall be used to prejudice any claims of the state. So you got to kind of read the whole thing. You just don't say the Supremacy Clause exists here, therefore the federal government always gets their way, because that's not what it says. So I believe that wolves and coyotes will interbreed with any consenting species that they can get away with. I believe that the word sustainability is a code word for reduced human population. I believe that there's elements of supernaturalism that we've heard today, including things like the wolves and whales call to me the most. That's a supernatural impression. The spirits know me as such and such. That's a supernatural impression. We got to covet the sanctity of such and such. That's a supernatural impression. This is a sacred right. That's a supernatural impression. And so this problem of supernaturalism is where you get writers like this, Jack London, Call of the Wild. Okay, and a lot of people are familiar with this. I remember I first read this in 5th grade. So they might not want to, people that want to go for that supernaturalism might not want the idea, hey, animals kill each other out there. That's not very nice, but that's what happens. So I believe that environmentalism is the current anti-capitalism vehicle of choice. I believe that environmentalists disdain state sovereignty because of the state's potential to thwart the land-grabbing, water-grabbing efforts of the Forest Service, the BLM, the Fish and Wildlife Service, etc. If you want to know if the U.S. government is overstepping its bounds, just ask yourself, would the original states have ratified the Constitution if it said an endangered wolf could be protected even if it ate domestic cattle? I believe the answer is clear. No, they would not have ratified it. That's what I call my thumbnail test of constitutionality or not. Okay, so let's see. There was another. And it was collaboration and cooperation. Let's see if I kept those notes. But I believe that if you want to collaborate and cooperate, you are going to lose ground with the federal government because they're going to come in and as it was stated by a couple speakers, they're going to move the goalposts for you. There's two speakers that referred to that practice by the federal government. There you are out there cooperating and collaborating and all that kind of stuff, and then they move the goalposts on you, and I think that that's what you can continue to expect out of the federal government. So getting back to supernaturalism, I am unwilling to sacrifice to the wolf idol. That doesn't mean I worship cattle and sheep. I just want to eat high protein. That concludes my comment.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Let's go.
Well, that is a hard act to follow. Let me just say that in my background, I worked about 10 years on the Hill for Pat Schroeder, did environmental issues as well as Armed Services Committee, and worked with PETA on a lot of stuff. So I understand where environmentalists come from, and I understand the need for them. But then again, I'm 4th generation Cochise County, and I have always loved coming back to this county. I married, my ex was from Croatia. I can't tell you how many people came through our living room because their bucket list was to be in Cochise County, the life of the cowboy, the life of the rancher, and the way of life. So what we have to do as Board of Supervisors is look at these two sides and bring them together. You know, in Phoenix, I lived there 7 years before I came back, I used to ask everyone I met in Phoenix, have you been to Cochise County? None of them knew where it was. They went north. They go to Sedona. They go to Flagstaff. They don't understand Cochise County. Oh, well, maybe they heard of Tombstone and they might have come to Bisbee. But when you talk about polls, about people wanting the wolves and stuff, these people sometimes don't even know where their meat comes from. They think it comes in a, nice little package with saran wrap around it. And I did that for 7 years, and I was amazed. It's one thing to come here, and I'm talking to the constituents who may or may not vote for me in Portal, and have an aspect of what you want to see of a culture or of this county to be. But you also have to respect the way in which people have lived. My grandfather came here in the 1890s. My great-grandmother was Yaqui. My great-grandmother on the other side of my father was from Chihuahua, and had an incredible experience with the Apaches and the different tribes. So, when we go back and say, well, they should be here and we just took their land, well, this is something that's happened. And we can't go back to the past, and we really can't sit there and say, well, then the Apaches should have had it and the Yaqui should have this land. We have to deal with the reality of today and how do we work for tomorrow. One of my biggest problems with the Recovery Act is Cochise County is different than any other county in Arizona. And I think when we the government, and I've seen it because I worked on the Hill, they like to put everybody in one box. And they figure that, well, everyone will just work within that sandbox. Well, in reality, it doesn't work that way. Cochise County, we never got a heads up. There was no pre-analysis. That, to me, right there, it started on the wrong foot. You can't expect Cochise County to bear the burden and the cost of losing their way of life to introduce the wolf, which, you know, it's a lot to undertake to understand this in like 2 months. But one thing that is definitely, you know, kind of standing out in my mind is that the wolves traveled back and forth, that they really were never in Cochise County permanently. And I've looked at both sides. Now, I'm going to do more research. I think that what we as the Board of Supervisors need to do is look at what is going on and how can we compensate the rancher so that, I mean, I grew up with these ranchers. I don't want to see them leave. This is a way of life that I want to come back after living 20 years in New York City. I dreamed about coming back to Cochise County. I feel that it's also my responsibility to make sure that both can coexist. But the one thing is definitely it's not balanced. You know, one of my issues is with Sonora. Now, I have a lot of friends who have ranches in Sonora, and they're telling me, no way, we're going to shoot the wolf because they're having elk tours. That's where they make money. Mexico is different than the United States. Yet again, we're expected to bear the burden where Mexico will probably never embrace this program. You know, we can send the wolves down there, but I would think that that would be upsetting to the environmentalists because they're going to be killed. I have friends in Agua Prieta and Sonora who tell me this. So we have to not just look at how Cochise County has to bear the burden for this, but how we have to work with Sonora. How do we expand that and so that it's balanced? Because we can't expect Cochise County to constantly be having so many wolves so that Sonora will one day wake up and say, okay, we'll embrace them. But it is our responsibility to see how we can do things to help the ranchers to also coexist with the gray wolf. But compensation is key. The language in which probable and confirmed is really far. So what happens, what's the best way to deal with stuff is at the grassroots level. Anything that ever got up to Congress started at grassroots level. It didn't start in the federal government. So this is our opportunity to see how we can come with a really wise resolution that doesn't, you know, rid the Mexican wolf, because I do believe that the animals and our ecosystem is rest on having these kinds of animals around, right? It's just the balance. But we talk about ecotourism and we talk about the cowboy tourism, the ranching tourism. I mean, you cannot all of a sudden say we no longer want what everyone in the world knows us for, which is about the cowboy, the rancher, and that way of life. Yes, we have an incredible diverse ecosystem that we have to embrace also. So one can't precede the other. And right now, I just see that the ranchers are really taking a hit. But I want those people in Portal. I'll come up. I'm going to talk to you. I'd love to talk to the gentleman who was working with Mexico to see, you know, because I'm hearing one side, I like to hear who he's working with. I believe that having worked in the environmental arena for a long time and also growing up in this county that I love so much, and I've known these ranchers all my life, that there has to be a balance, and right now it just isn't there. So with that said, I want to assure everybody that we really appreciate you coming. We appreciate all the emotions, all the you know, incredible conversation that we heard, because you can see the passion by both sides. I want to really thank the ranchers because you are taking a huge hit, and it's not fair, it's not reasonable. And so know that we really want to make a resolution that really helps you and possibly could be something that the whole state can get behind. So again, thank you very much. Please do not feel hesitant to reach out to me and let me know on both sides how you feel. I think the best way to go forward is to educate ourselves, to coexist, and to talk to one another. The ranchers, you know, one thing I will say about working with environmentalists is that I think sometimes environmentalists don't put themselves in the shoes of the people that, like say here, exactly the ranchers. So it would be wise, and if the ranchers, if they reach out to you, please try to explain to them what you're going through, because sometimes we just don't necessarily put ourselves in the other person's shoes. And I think if we can have that kind of conversation, we can coexist and find maybe more things that we can agree with and disagree. So with that said, thank you so much. Again, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
All right. Again, I'd like to. Oh, I didn't run it. Cut off my colleagues' applause. Again, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight, and again, the very civil discussion. Everybody should be commended. This is the way things should work in this country. So everybody gets their point of view heard, and then we come together and try to form at least a consensus of some kind. So it was a great night tonight. I appreciate everybody's time. The next meeting for the Board of Supervisors is going to be tomorrow at 10 a.m. in this very room, and we are going to have a budget review with our county staff. It'll be a working session as we work towards finalizing the county budget for next year. So if anybody wants to come to that meeting, you're welcome to attend as well. So with that, we will adjourn. Thank you for coming.